All right, welcome on in, everybody, and yeah, happy St. Patty's Day, and let's talk about this week in space. Just a brief introduction. I am Joan Emerson Bell. I'm an astrologer, tarot reader, and now licensed mental health counselor, oddly enough. Um, I like to do this weekly astro weather forecast every Monday at 11-ish a.m. Mountain Time, making that 10-ish a.m. Pacific Time and 1-ish in the p.m. on the East Coast. Do it live on Instagram. If you're watching this, then you probably know that. I also post the recording to YouTube so you can watch it at your leisure. It also comes out as a podcast if you don't want to look at this guy, this old withered wizard of a man. You can listen to it as a podcast. And I also do a weekly, sometimes astrology radio show, astrology themed radio show called the Melee Report, which is all the astro weather you never thought you needed, set to all the music you never thought you would hear. And that comes out weekly. I just put out an episode the other day, and I'll post a link in my stories and in the show notes so y'all can check that out if you'd like to get your astro weather with more rock, less talk. All right, so that concludes my intro and announcements. Let's just jump into the astro weather of the week, shall we? Okay, just a brief overview of the things that we're going to be dealing with. We have the sun making a conjunction to the north node, and then Neptune in the very last degrees of Pisces. And then the sun will enter into Aries midweek and then come into a conjunction with Venus, who is doing a little dance with Pluto as well. So we're getting some kind of end of Pisces, kind of dream vision, imagination access, or sorry, information at the beginning of the week. And then towards the end of the week, we're diving into some underworld journey stuff with Venus retrograde conjunct the sun, making that cazimi to the sun, and then sextiles to Pluto on either end of that. So starting off today, Monday, March the 7th, we have the sun in Pisces conjunct the north node in Pisces. This is going down at 27 degrees and 23 arc minutes of the mutable water sign of the fishes. And so last Thursday, Friday, depending on where you were at, we experienced this total lunar eclipse in Virgo on the south node, right? And so the nodes of the moon are where the eclipses occur. We have the south node, which is K2, the tail of the dragon. This is a release point, a place of letting go. This is an opportunity to shift habituated patterns, right? And so that was kind of up with this eclipse energy, right? Thinking about what are the kind of unskillful parts of the Virgo archetype that maybe we want to let go of, and thinking about old habituated patterns that we've been just doing, right? Kind of on autopilot, that this is an opportunity to sort of release and let go of. Now, today, Monday, we have the Sun conjunct the North Node, right? So, going from this South Node releasing energy into this kind of increasing energy. The North Node, the head of the dragon, Rahu, is sort of pulling us into new behavioral patterns. It is a point of increase. It is the opportunity to develop new mental and emotional patterns, right? And so, again, thinking back to Thursday and Friday and sort of like some of this energy of the eclipse, right? Thinking about unskillful Virgo tendencies, right? Habits of perfectionism, right? I'm not good enough. It's not good enough. It'll never be good enough. I need to do X, Y, and Z before I can, launch my business or say that, I'm a professional or show up in this certain way, right? Or kind of outdated ideals of service, right? And one of the things that came up for me during the eclipse was I just started a new job, and Friday was my day off. But I was like, oh, you know what? Like my supervisor is like not feeling well. I could just go in and like do this job. And my partner, God bless her, was like, do not do that. Do not be that employee that just like shows up on your day off. right? Absolutely do not do that. And I was like, oh my God, you're so right. And I spent the day recording my radio show, which is a great way of being of service, right? And did not set a precedent that I'm just gonna like come in on my day off, right, to rescue somebody else, right? So these ideas of like rescuing and being of service and like sacrificing ourselves to help other people out, while these may be beneficial, right, or come from a positive motivation, might be outdated or unskillful ways of showing up, right, that we get this opportunity to release. And as we release this, we get to initiate new kind of mental, emotional, and behavioral patterns, right? But, I also want to name that letting go isn't easy, right? And when we are freaked out, when we're in crisis, we tend to like grab onto things, right? We grab onto what we know, we grab onto what we've been doing, right? Oh, I'm freaked out. I'm just going to go into work on my day off because that's a structure, right? You know, and like when we, like these sort of habituated patterns, which just become natural, right? We kind of cling to for dear life, especially when that energy comes up and it's like, you got to let this go now. Wouldn't you like to do something else? Right. So letting go doesn't come easy. Right. And so to have a lot of grace for ourselves and with ourselves as like we're moving through this like pretty intense eclipse portal. Right. And so one of the issues with the Virgo South Node is this tendency to focus entirely on the material or the physical plane, right? And it's focused on perfecting things in this physical realm, right? For the ideally for the betterment of the collective, but it can also become so focused on the details that it misses the bigger picture, right? And so today, with the North Node in Pisces and the Sun conjunct Pisces and the Sun, kind of our identity, our ego structure, our aspirations, what we are striving for, right? With as the sun comes up in and conjuncts the North Node in Pisces, we get to see the world as interconnected and interdependent, right? We are learning to see everything as connected, yet the it as composed of individual and unique parts of the whole. Whereas Virgo discriminates, right, separates out. Pisces seeks to integrate, right? So we are kind of letting go of this like separating notion and kind of reaching out and grabbing onto like something that potentially could be more integrative, right? To see the big picture instead of getting lost in the minutia and the little pieces of the thing, right? So I was just listening to the new episode of the Emerald podcast, which I forgot to write down the title of. Anyway, and I didn't get all the way through it. It's long, but I love the Emerald. And if you, I'll put a link in the show notes. And if I can, I'll put something in my stories. But I really appreciate the Emerald podcast, right? And it's about mythology and animism and stuff that like really excites me. And this new episode is all about these current times and the American wound, which is, feels pretty up right now. I also think this is interesting because America has their Chiron at 20 degrees of Aries, and Chiron is currently at 21 degrees of Aries, which means that America is going through their Chiron return. Chiron has a 50-year orbit, right? So about every 50 years. Oh yeah, getting some comments that the Emerald is the best and that they like people like it a lot. Yeah, check it out. Josh is fantastic, really smart individual. So anyway, Chiron is currently at 21 degrees of Aries, and has been posted up at like 19, between 19 and 21 degrees of Aries for a long time. Um, and so really like activating America's natal Chiron at 20 degrees, right? And again, Chiron has this 50-year orbit. So when you're 50, you get your Chiron return, right? America is about 250 years old. So, you do the math, that's like what, four Chiron returns? Anyway, we're going through it, five Chiron returns. We're going through it right now, right? And so it's really like activating the core American wound, right? And again, this episode of the Emerald kind of explores what that might be, and I'm sure that we each have our own ideals and imaginations about like what the core American wounding is. And I think in a lot of ways we're living through like that activation as we are living through America's Chiron return. And the archetype of Chiron is the wounded healer, right? And not to dive into the story right now, but one of the parts of the tale is Chiron is struck by this arrow. Chiron is a great healer and mentor and teacher who is struck by this arrow from Hercules, which is dipped in hydropoison, which has no cure. And so Chiron, although he is a magnificent healer, cannot heal this wound that he has been inflicted with, right? And so he goes around and learns all of these different techniques, these healing processes, in order to manage the wound that's been inflicted upon him. And so it's this sort of balance of like learning to heal yet always suffering, right? The wound that will never heal, right? And Chiron also becomes the archetype of the wounded healer, as we deal with the suffering, as we deal with the wound, as we learn to sit with it, as we kind of go into our own healing journey, we are able to support other people as they engage in their healing processes. And the best definition of a healer that I've ever heard is a healer is somebody who's so engaged in their healing journey that they can't help but bring other people along with them. I don't know why you can't hear me. Can anybody else hear me? Is anybody else having issues? Huh. Anyway, I'm just going to continue on as you all sort this out. Okay, great. So anyway, right, America is going through their Chiron return at this moment. And so, I think a lot of the issues around core wounding in the American experiment is coming to the surface, you know. Oh, good. I'm glad that you fixed it. And so anyway, this episode of The Emerald like speaks about this, and I just think it's a really interesting thing because I think part of what we're experiencing is the kind of toxicity of the festering wounds of America kind of coming to the surface. And ideally, this is part of the healing process, right? And this is, the healing crisis, as it's talked about in psychology, is right. Like when things build up and build up and build up, it forces a meltdown, which really directs us into the healing process, right? As Chiron is sitting there and the wound keeps festering and festering and festering, and eventually he's like, okay, I've got to do something to fix this, right? Or I'm going to lose my leg. And I think that again, the kind of current situation that we find ourselves in America, ideally is part of this healing crisis where it like crescendos to a breakdown so there can be a breakthrough and actual healing can occur, right? Because the sort of initial impulse is to like put a band-aid on, to push it away, to blame other people. And this is part of the Chiron archetype as well, right? This kind of suffering and resentment being like, it's your fault, right? It's your fault I stubbed my toe, right? If you've ever like hurt yourself, like that sharp pain of stubbing your toe, the immediate thing is like, God, why me? Right? And who left this thing there? Right? And then, as that cortisol and adrenaline dissipates, we get to like come back into our frontal cortex, take a deep breath, sit with what's actually happening, maybe go get a bandage, right? Like actually do something. Anyway, I digress. On the last episode of I'm gonna bring it back around. The last episode of The Emerald, uh, the narrator, Josh, the creator, is talking about how uh in our current political situation, there's all of this analysis about like what's going on, why this happened, how this happened, where we're at, right? And the analysis isn't really doing anything to help the rift in America or to heal the core wounding, right? And this is kind of Virgo South Node stuff, right? This kind of analyzing perspective. Oh, let's separate this out. Let's look at this data. Let's look at this information, right? This is why this happened. It's all kind of left brain, right? This kind of discerning analysis. And Josh points out, like, that's not really doing anything to help, right? And if we know why, like, it doesn't fix or change anything, right? He points to this kind of lack of spirit or deeper meaning as a core issue. And he posits that people are hungering for meaning and deeper connection, which is Pisces North Node stuff. And instead of trying to analyze how we got here, to accept that we are here and to learn into to come into a deeper connection with the spirit, whatever that means to you, right? And so like analysis and discernment, right, in the like mental material world as these Virgo South Node characteristics versus like spirituality and meaning making through connection with the divine, which is this Pisces North Node thing that is pulling us towards like deeper connection and larger picture meaning making. Right. What's up, Ashley? Nice to see you, my friend. So anyway, that was a long way of talking about this sort of Virgo Pisces nodal axis, right? And so now we have the sun meeting up with the North Node, which is unfamiliar territory. It's what we're being asked to step into, right? This is an opportunity to write a new script, to grab onto a different storyline and to see where that takes us, right? And the North Node, Rahu, who is this head of the dragon, right? Who has been separated from their belly and is just hungering and hungering, right? Trying to pull us deeper into something, right? So one of the questions that we can ask is, what are we hungering for, right? What like what is that thing that is lacking? Collectively, again, the point that the emerald makes is that like we're lacking a spirituality and connection with something bigger than the self, right? We're lacking like depth and meaning making, right? We're also lacking connection with each other. But on an individual basis, like to consider what I am hungering for, what I am starving for, what I need to like fill myself with, or I'm desiring to fill myself with. And we can think of the South Node as this letting go point, right? And we're experience that during the eclipse, and then that gives the space, if we can do it, right? If we can manage that, however we can manage that, to reach out for something new, to grab onto something new, to grab onto this kind of North Node point, right? To fill ourselves in a different way. And again, moving from this kind of analyzing, discerning left brain kind of perspective into a bigger, more integrative Piscean perspective that sees the collective as well as the unique individuals that make up that collective. So, again, today is an opportunity to really check in with ourselves and think about like what are we dissolving, right? And then what are we coagulating? What are we wanting to reform something into? What are we letting go of so we can grab onto something else? What do I feel like I really need right now? So, good question to be asking. Moving along to Wednesday, March the 19th, we have the Sun in Pisces conjunct Neptune in Pisces. This is happening at the spooky old anaretic degree of 29 degrees and 36 arc minutes of Pisces. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this like anaretic degree. I'm going to talk about the end of Pisces, the last decan of Pisces, right? And the decans are kind of ancient 10-degree sections of the zodiac, which are each kind of governed over by like a different image or a spirit. And this goes all the way back to the Egyptians. And it was a way of dividing up the stars or dividing up the sky as time of knowing when to say the prayers for funeral rites and for fertility rites, et cetera, et cetera. And it's been passed down. Agrippa writes about it. Ibn Ezra writes about it. T. Susan Chang writes about it in a more modern context, as well as Marlena Seven Bremner, who's done great work on the decans. If you're interested, you should check out her Patreon. She's a brilliant author and also really talented artist and great co-teacher. And then Austin Coppock has also written about it in the much sought after The 36 Faces, which is pretty difficult to find. However, there has been talk of him putting out a second edition for several years now, and I'll believe it when I see it. But anyway, I'm referencing Austin Coppock mostly. So he talks about the third decan of Pisces. He calls it a cup of blood, and the Hermetic title is the Lord of Perfected Success. Right. So this decan is the hunt for perfection, right? It is the culmination of all of like the zodiac, right? This is kind of standing on the edge of this kind of psychic, interconnected waters of Pisces, looking over before we are kind of rebirthed into Aries. Right. And so it's the kind of like wanting to wrap things up or get to the perfection of things. Right. And so we can find ourselves in this deck in lost in illusion and also chasing rainbows, right? And it is associated with the Ten of Cups, which I didn't pull out my deck today because I was running behind, but the Ten of Cups in the Rider-Waite-Smith depicts a family checking out a rainbow, like everybody's happy, right? This kind of idealized vision of family, of connection, of love, right? According to Austin Coppock in the 36 Faces, we see images of, and I'm quoting Coppock here. Here we see images of the mad quest for an ideal. The last decan of Pisces is a place of martyrdom, of being willing to sacrifice everything. It is about the attainment of one's greatest desire, no matter the cost. He goes on to say, but the true object of the passion is a merger with the universal self, right? And so we can easily get lost in the kind of terrestrial, right? In the, oh, this person looks like the thing that I desire. Like, if I get this job, that will make me better, right? Oh, if I just have enough money, then like everything will be okay. I'll be spiritually fit, I will be a good person, et cetera, right? Um, the face and body of the beloved are just a mask, an entry point into the experience of the all as bliss. As a narrative, again, quoting Coppock, as a narrative, the third face unfolds as the quest for true and perfect love. Many of those who walk this decan are only too willing to engage themselves in the romantic and often tragic stories which swarm this decan. He goes on to say, thus this face is littered with broken dreams and failed martyrs, those who sacrifice themselves to an illusion. This face contains heights of agony and ecstasy. The pain of betrayal results from investing in the wrong ideal, mistaking the face of the beloved. The third face of Pisces, the last of the decans, looks always to the end, the ultimate meaning of the entire cycle. Moros, which means doom, it's the spirit of doom in Greek, whispers that it is pointless and that the wheel of incarnation is merely a cruel carnival ride. In argument, Alepis, which means hope, points to beauty, love, and the real possibility of happy endings. The last decan is thus a miniature of all incarnation, asking the most important question and offering the most impassioned answer, right? So we get this kind of the last decan of Pisces where, the North Node is, where Neptune is, where the sun is making these conjunctions, really activating the space is, this question about like doom and hope, right? And the sort of what is the vision that is being implanted? What is the thing that we are striving for, right? What is the dream that is animating us, right? Um, so I bring this in because the Sun conjuncts Neptune at this very last degree in Pisces and then moves into Aries later this week, right? Then Venus and Mercury will retrograde back into this final degree of Pisces, and then Neptune will enter into Aries on March 30th. Saturn will follow, right? We're moving back and forth between the last degree of Pisces or the last decan of Pisces and the first decan of Aries. And the first decan of Aries is the Lord of Domination, right? And is depicted as a dark man with red eyes carrying an axe, right? This like really intense vision. And the first decan of Aries is all about separating and severing and creating an individual identity from this undifferentiated consciousness of Pisces, right? So again, we get this sort of like, dissolving and coagulating, right? The last decan of Pisces initiates this vision, and then the first decan of Aries is like, cool, I'm like cutting away from what was before and I'm going after this thing, right? And so with the Sun conjunct Neptune in this last degree of Pisces, in this third decan, we can expect some intense Piscean themes to arrive, right? And I think this also like comes up with that North Node conjunction. And the last degree of any sign is pretty intense, right? It's kind of like the final exam that we're where we are reviewing all the lessons that we learned in this sign and thinking about any changes that we need to make to things, right? Or the things that we didn't accomplish or the ways that we need to integrate the information of the sign. The last degree of the sign is also in a malefic bound, right? All of the signs finish up with malefic bounds, and that means ruled by either Mars or Saturn, and the bounds are another kind of dignity, a way of looking at dignity. They're parts of the sign that are ruled by different planets that we're not going to get into here. Um, and then the last decan of Pisces is also ruled by Mars, who is malefic, as well as the first decan of Aries ruled by Mars. So we have a lot of like martial energy as an undercurrent, right? And so we have this Neptune conjunction with the sun, right, where we can kind of lose ourselves. Neptune is related to illusion, confusion, delusion. It hooks us onto a dream or a vision, right? The sun is our identity and our sense of self, our aspirations, what we are striving for, how we want to shine our light into the world. Right. When the sun conjuncts Neptune, Neptune might conjure visions that it presents to the sun, right? The ideal, this is what you should aspire to. These visions may be unrealistic or impossible. They may be impractical or unsustainable. They may be overly romantic, right? And like Austin Coppock was talking about in with the image of that decan, right? Cause us to martyr ourselves or sacrifice ourselves or leave us wandering looking for that romantic ideal, right? Referring to what Coppock wrote about this decan, it may be the striving for the perfect love or the idealized vision, right? It is about the attainment of one's greatest desire, no matter what the cost, right? So the striving for this perfect vision can lead to, right, all of this like martyrdom and self-sacrifice. With the sun conjunct Neptune here, we might receive a vision of this perfect ideal, right? That creates this desire, that creates this drive within us, right? However, we don't want to fall into illusion or act impulsively and sacrifice everything. We want to learn to sit with it and use some of the positive Virgo qualities of discernment, right? Is this right for me? What's actually happening here, right? To sort things out. And to like recognize, is this just a mirage, right? Am I being swept away in a vision, right? Or what can I learn from this? Because when the sun moves into Aries later this week, it's going to want to take action around whatever this image or vision that was cultivated here in this last decan of Pisces presents to us. And I think this also has a lot to do with the sun conjunct the North Node, right? This sort of like hungering for something. I'm not really sure what it is. Neptune comes in and it's like, blam, it's this, right? And then the sun is like, oh, it's got to be that thing, right? And kind of like grips onto it and fixates on it. And when it goes into Aries, it's like, I'm going to make that happen. And so really spending some time sitting with, right, the dream seeds that Neptune planted during this conjunction, right? Because Neptune can be really slippery and difficult to trust. I think about Proteus, who is a prophet, who is a like sea god, right? And the way that you get the prophecy is you got to like sneak up on him and grab him, right? And then he's a shapeshifter, so he'll shift through all these different forms, right? Going from like terrible beasts to like, horrible visions to blah 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 blah, and you got to hold on to him until he returns to his true form, and then you can ask for the prophecy, right? And I think a lot about, the process of thought with this, right? We grab onto a thought and it just like twists and turns and turns and twists, and like, now you're thinking about this thing that happened in childhood and you're thinking about this thing next week, right? And being able to like sit with this thing or sit with the vision until it really reveals itself, and not just be satisfied with like, oh, that looks like the thing that I want, right? But learning to like really sit with it until we can receive the prophecy. Neptune is also dissolving, right? So when Neptune meets the sun, they can dissolve our sense of identity, which can be like really difficult, right? They can also dissolve our motivation and the vitality of the sun, right? This can lead us to feeling low energy or like we don't know who we are or what we're doing, right? This can make us feel listless or lost or adrift. And it's important not to freak out, right? This is what astrology is for. This is why we bring you context on this show, right? So, if you're feeling low energy, like you're feeling the way that you should be, right? And I think that in our late stage capitalist system, if you're feeling low energy, it can be like there's something wrong with me. I'm a bad person, right? Maybe I'm dying. Maybe I'm going to get swept up and crushed in the gears of this giant machine, right? So just learning to like be okay with where you're at, right? And see if you can go with the flow and be gentle with yourself, right? There's a tendency when things dissolve to just grab onto the first thing that feels solid. But in a world where everything feels like a Neptunian illusion, right? Where everything is computer, we want to be careful what we like cling to. And, to see what it's like to just allow yourself to float for a day or two, right? Because Neptune stimulates the imagination, as well as the emotional undercurrents of the unconscious and creativity. So instead of trying to like find something solid to hold on to see if you can allow yourself to just drift and process what's coming up through creativity, dream work, meditation, daydreaming, revelry, right? And allow these energies to, give a little bit of information around what might be that like true protean form. And these energies will begin to shift in the next day or two when the sun enters into Aries, which happens on Thursday, March the 20th. So, with the sun's ingress into the cardinal fire sign of Aries, that marks the equinox, the spring equinox, right? Um, um, so, uh, sorry. Okay. So although the sun is in a different sign, entering into Aries, right? The dream, like it will separate us a little bit from that dreamy, illusory influence of Neptune, right? Because it's in a different sign. But I'd still give it a couple days to fully dissipate before, really taking action on anything if you can help it, right? So again, the sun entering Aries marks the spring equinox. This is the moment of equal light and dark, day and night, when according to the show The West Wing, you can balance an egg on its point if you can afford eggs at this point. you know, but this is as we enter into the equinox, or we hit the equinox, in the northern hemisphere, we move into times of longer days and shorter nights, right? Which begins the rule of the night, the rule of the light, the supremacy of the light over the dark, which has its upsides and downsides, right? We can think of light as like consciousness, whereas dark may be like more intuition, right? And so I think ideally we have a balance in ourselves, and in the kind of astrological model, we do have these balances as we move through the kind of cycle of the zodiac, right? But finding this point of like, oh snap, for this moment we get this like perfect balance, right? This occurs at 2:01 a.m. Pacific time and 5:01 a.m. Eastern time. That's Thursday, March 20th, early in the morning, if you want to try and balance an egg, or just sit there and notice what does it feel like to be in this alignment for a moment. And one of the things that I love about the equinox is it's like this, okay, like this breath, this moment of like, oh, okay, we're in alignment, everything is equal, day and night is equal, and then it shifts, right? And then we spend the next cycle coming back to that equilibrium point at the beginning of Libra season, right? And then it shifts again into greater darkness, right? So it's always this kind of shifting away from balance and returning to balance. And I think this is very much what life is like. This is incarnation in a nutshell, like finding that balance point and then shifting out of it. But I think as we recognize that balance point, right, on an equinox or in ourself, that alignment point in ourself, and knowing, okay, this is what it feels like to be balanced or in alignment, that gives us a reference point that we can return to. And so on the equinox, it might be nice to like just see what does it feel like? What is the balance that I'm feeling in myself in this moment? What is my personal alignment, right? And how do I know when I'm out of that, right? And how can I gently shift myself back into it? So, anywho, talk about Aries for a moment. Aries is a cardinal fire sign, right? So the cardinal signs kind of initiate the energy of that element, right? As cardinal fire, Aries is igniting something, it's starting a fire, right? And it doesn't really care if the fires stay lit, right? That's Taurus's job, or like Leo's job. The fixed signs like are maintaining, right? The fire signs are just combusting, or the cardinal sign is just initiating, kicking off, right? So cardinal fire is just this combustion that sets that fire off, right? And so oftentimes once Aries starts the fire, they will just move on to the next thing and set it alight as well, right? And just walk away, right? So um to with Aries season, we can think about like what are we igniting, right? What is the fire we are starting, right? What do we want to light up? What is the thing that we want to initiate? Right? Aries also arrives on the scene and they're kind of like fighting for space. They are proving their right to belong, right? They are learning to assert themselves and their will. Also, right, they are it's ruled by Mars, and they're kind of the cutting nature of Mars, right? Forging ahead and cutting a path forward. Right. And the glyph of Aries is the glyph of the ram, right? Aries rules the head and they charge into things. They go into things head first, right? This glyph, though, also maybe represents a sprout, right? Who is just fighting its way through the crust of the earth, right? Because there is this kind of fighting spirit of Aries that needs to like fight its way to be born, right? Severing that connection with the undifferentiated prima materia of Pisces, right? Cutting that off and then cutting its way forward, or forcing its way forward through the surface of the earth to come out and say, I am here, I am this individual being, right? And I'm making my way in the world. So that's just some Aries info right there. Which moves us on to Friday, March the 21st. We have Venus retrograde in Aries, sextile Pluto in Aquarius. Now, so the first part of the week, we have, the sun making these like pretty intense contacts with the North Node, Neptune in Pisces, and then entering into Aries, right? Initiating something new. And by the end of the week, we're into the Venus retrograde story, right? On Friday the 21st, Venus retrograde in Aries sextiles Pluto in Aquarius at 3 degrees and 22 minutes, right? Pluto, lord of the underworld. Venus is already in this underworld journey of the retrograde process, right? And is coming in to make their conjunction with the sun on Saturday, which is that Kazemi moment, is sort of the heart of the retrograde. And we'll get to that in a minute. So Pluto is a planet of intensity that is associated with power and control. Pluto also rules over the underworld, over unseen things, the unconscious, and the riches of the subterranean realm, right? Pluto rules over everything of value because, in our human world, the things of value come from the earth: gold, diamonds, right? All the things that our currencies are based on, all are things that come from the earth. All of our commodities are based from things that come from the earth, right? Venus deals with relationships, love, beauty, and values. So friendships may feel pretty intense at towards the end of the week. There might be important bonding that occurs, right? Connection relationship may pull you into the depths of yourself, right? Force us to look inward, right? Or bring up some unconscious material. Or like a deeper kind of depth might open up in a relationship. Emotions also might feel kind of intense or like pretty powerful, right? And surface level stuff is probably not going to cut it, right? Because there will be a desire to go deep and to connect at a deeper level, right? On a mythic level, Venus is retrograde, right? So they're engaged in this underworld journey at the moment. They're invisible and about to enter into the heart of the sun, right? And be burned up and be reborn on the other side. So this transit feels pretty fitting, right? As Venus is receiving a little support from Pluto, Lord of the Underworld. Pluto is a planet of initiation and transformation, right? And by engaging in the Plutonian initiation, we gain access to power. So, in the descent myths of Inanna, Persephone, Psyche from the Cupid and Psyche story, these figures begin as kind of naive young maidens, and through their journey into the underworld, they learn to access and integrate their active elements, right? they're pulled into the depths, and there's a part that dies, which gives them access to a deeper, more integrated sense of self. And when they emerge, they are powerful beings, more capable of taking control and initiating their will. Right. They've been initiated into this realm of power, and this is what Pluto does for us. Right. And so in the myth of Inanna, Inanna goes into the underworld to meet her sister Ereshkigal. Right, and Ereshkigal is pissed because her sister gets to have all the fun and gets to go to all the parties. Meanwhile, Ereshkigal, this chthonic underworld goddess, is in the underworld. No one wants to hang out with her. She's just eating mud and drinking dirty water. Right. And so as Inanna descends into the underworld, Ereshkigal strips her of all of her power objects, and Inanna enters the underworld naked and bowed low, at which point Ereshkigal kills her and hangs her on a hook on the wall. And I just want to read a brief section from Inanna, Queen of Heaven and Earth, uh, by Diane Wolkstein and Samuel Noah Kramer. This is their analysis of the myth, or one part of it. In many ways, Ereshkigal is the other, neglected side of Inanna. Therefore, when she hears of the appearance at her gates of the all-white, fertile, bedecked goddess of love, she is enraged. For Inanna's light, glory, and perpetual movement have, to some extent, been achieved at her expense. Ereshkigal commands Neti, who is the gatekeeper, to divest the bright goddess of all she has accomplished, so that the effervescent force of the universe, the ever-rising planet of the East, may experience what it is to be rejected, incapable of movement or relationship, rendered prima materia. And so, we have Ereshkigal, this sort of dark goddess, this underworld goddess, right, being like, fuck you, bitch, like, get down here, right, and stripping her of all of her power and being like, this is what it feels like. This is what it feels like to live in the Kur in the underworld. And then she eventually kills her and hangs her on a hook on the wall, right? And so this, in the tale, this is the moment when Venus makes their Cazimi, their retrograde conjunction with the sun, which happens the following day on Saturday, March the 22nd, right? So the way that Inanna is saved and reborn is through the compassion and the cunning of the Kirigara, who are these two non-binary beings that are invented by Enki, right? They enter into the underworld because no man or woman can enter the underworld and then leave, but because the Kirigara are non-binary beings, they are able to navigate these liminal spaces, which I think is kind of genius, right? So they enter the underworld as flies, and they come to Ananna's aid, right? They show up and they offer Ereshkigal compassion as she's laying on the floor, being like, "Oh, my belly hurts," and they're like, "Oh, your belly, your belly." And Ereshkigal's like, What do you see me?" And they're like, "Yeah, girl." And Ereshkigal's like, "Oh, my back, my back." And they're like, "Oh, my back, your back," right? And Rashkigal's like, "Oh my God, no one has ever shown me any compassion before," right? And so she's so touched by this that she's like, "Yeah, you can have anything that you want in the underworld." And so they take Anana's corpse and they sprinkle the water of life on it, and they bring her back to life, right? And so this is part of the Pluto sextile Venus, right? Showing compassion for these gnarly underworld parts of us, right? That unloved bitch who we've just like shoved into the darkest part of ourselves, who eats mud and drinks dirty water, right? These like rejected parts of ourselves. And Pluto sextile Venus offers us the ability to show these parts compassion, to welcome them in, right? To have care and compassion for their suffering, and teaches us that we can love these parts. And this is what liberates us and allows us to love more deeply and to live more freely. So, Saturday, March the 22nd, the sun or Venus retrograde comes in to perfect their conjunction with the sun in Aries at 2 degrees and 39 arc minutes. So, just for context, the last time Venus was conjunct the sun was in Gemini on June 4th, 2024. And this began a new Venus cycle, right? A new synodic cycle with the sun, which is closing on Saturday, right? And Venus was moving direct at that time. The last Venus retrograde conjunction was at 20 degrees of Leo. Conjunction with the sun was at 20 degrees of Leo on August the 13th of 2023. That's the last time that Venus was retrograde through Virgo and Leo. And so I'm bringing this up because with Saturday's conjunction, Venus enters into the sun and makes an offering of the relational information, of the beauty that they have found and they have received on their journey through the zodiac, right? This is that death moment of Inanna when Ereshkigal judges her and fixes upon her the eye of death. This is Persephone eating the pomegranate seeds. This is Psyche using Aphrodite's beauty products and dying, right? This is the death of the old so something new can be born. And again, right, this theme of the week, this dissolving and coagulating, this letting go so something new can come into consciousness and we can take hold of it, right? Something new can be born. So this is an opportunity to think about what aspects of our relationships, our ideals of love, our aesthetics, we can sacrifice on the altar of the sun, make an offering of in the heart of the heart of the heart of the sun. So something new can be born, right? So something new can take shape. And what would that look like, right? And how do we want to move things forward, right? And how do we want to step forward so that we can walk in love and beauty? Right. So really considering, right, what are the old kind of stories that I'm telling about love? What are the old beliefs that I have about relationships? What are the old kind of ideals that I have about beauty or aesthetics that are no longer serving me, right? And how can I make an offering of this? How can I sacrifice this in the heart of the sun so that something new can take shape? And again, right, with the letting go, it's really difficult because we want to cling to the things that we know because it's really hard to trust the unknown, right? It's hard to lean into what could be, right? Even if what we're holding on to is painful. And I think this week, right, as we find this balance point of the equinox, right, maybe we can take a moment and be like, that's cool. I can let that go, right? And something new can come in, right? And just allowing ourselves the space to consider what that might look like. All right, coming up to the last transit, and I'll try and make this quick so y'all can go and enjoy your Mondays. So Sunday, March the 23rd, the sun in Aries sextiles Pluto in Aquarius at 3 degrees and 24 minutes. So remember, Venus made that sextile to Pluto, then came into conjunct the sun, Venus moving retrograde, sun moving direct, right? So they are crossing paths like ships in the night, right? And then the sun coming up to conjunct Pluto or to make that sextile to Pluto. So this sun sextile Pluto can help us take action based on the information that we are receiving about our values and what is truly important. This, kind of information coming from that Venus conjunction to the sun. This transit can help us to integrate to some degree the emotional depths that we are accessing through that Venus sextile to Pluto and then their conjunction with the sun. So Venus is coming up with this underworld information, offering that up to the sun receiving that, and then coming in to sort of take action around that as they sextile Pluto, right? Pluto is a planet of power. And so with this sextile, which is a supportive aspect, we can think about the right use of power and what that might look like, right? And then power is sort of a dirty word, right? Or at least I think it is, right? Or thought it is, because the representations of power that I've seen in the world tend to be power over and misuses of power, right? Money, right, as power leading to greed, right? Police as power leading to like corruption and misuses of power. Politicians as power, right, leading to corruption and greed and misuses of power, right? So like all of that, I've been like, oh, I don't want that. Like that's gross. But these are all representations of power over, which comes from a fear place, I think. And they're not representations of power with, which I think Pluto in Aquarius is helping us to recognize what it could look like to have power with, power in the collective, instead of a hierarchical power system, which has been really codified through Pluto's journey through Capricorn over the past 15 years, right? So how do we sit with power, right? How do we recognize where power functions in us, right? What is our relationship to power? Where do we access it? Where do we deny it? How can it be used for the benefit of us and those around us? Right. So I think the underworld journey of Venus is all about power. It's not about love, but it's about power, right? The Inanna myth is about power, right? The Persephone myth is about access to power, right? And with Pluto sextile the sun, we can consider what does power look like for us, and how can it be used in the service of love, right? Where is power in our body? How do we just sit with the power that we inherently have as human beings, who are like pretty magical and powerful beings, right? We have sentience, we have consciousness, we have imagination, we have opposable thumbs. This is powerful stuff right here to like turn a doorknob, right? You ever watch a cat try and do that? Like, doesn't work, right? This is power. This is like human power right here, right? So Pluto pulls us into the depths and wants us to get under the surface and to the realness, right? So you'll again today you'll probably not be satisfied with surface level stuff all weekend. You're like, let's get to the real, right? Let's get to the really real. I don't want to hear about the weather, right? I want to hear about like, you know, climate catastrophe. I want to hear about like your deep fears around apocalypse. I don't want to hear that it's unseasonably warm, right? You know, there there might be a lot of intensity over this weekend, right? And think about how we can use that intensity and that desire to get to the bottom of things to our advantage. And so, what things can you set up for yourself this week and this weekend where the intensity might be a really good ingredient and might help to propel you forward towards, you know, that shift of values that we've been considering or thinking about with Venus's offering to the sun, right? How do we take a step into what comes next and what we are rebirthing, right? This new kind of vision of love, this new kind of warrior goddess that Venus is emerging as the planet of the sun, or sorry, the morning star and the light bringer. So we can think about what is the light that we want to bring to the world and the power of that. And with that, my friends, I'm going to let you all go. Thank you all so much for tuning in to another exciting week in space. I'm your host with the most, Joan Emerson Bell, Blind Stallion Space Wizard on Instagram. I got a radio show called the Melee Report, which is all the yes, more intensity, Gina Maria, but you know, March is sort of like the cauldron of intensity for 2025. So as we move through this, things may be getting easier later in the year, but you know, we're up in it now, right? And so this is the underworld journey, and we're being pulled into it. And just, you know, relax, surrender, right? This is an opportunity to let go of old ideas and ways of being and relational structures and behavioral patterns so that we can make space for something new to come in. This is the alchemical time of dissolve et coagula, right? Letting go, dissolving things and coagulating something new. And yeah, with that, I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna go coagulate something new for myself. Thanks you all for tuning in. I appreciate you. Don't forget to check out the Melee Report, all the astro weather you never thought you needed, set to all the music you never thought you would hear. I'll put a link in the show notes and in my stories. Also, I will be speaking at LA Astro Fest at the end of April, so get your tickets for that today. I'm going to be doing a talk on parts work and astrology. It's going to be great as soon as I get around to putting that talk together. Anyway, check me out at Astrofest and I don't know, like, subscribe, share this with people, help spread the word. You know, I like to do this and I'd like it to get out there. So hook me up by hooking up other people. Anyway, that's all the astro weather that is fit to print, my friends. Y'all have a great week in space. I'll see you next time. And until then, be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and as always, may the force be with you. Bye now.